Do you sometimes find that you're out of sync with the right wing that you broadly identify with? And if so, on what issues do you actually disagree with them on?
So I'm attacked as much by the right. In fact,
Disagree with Arvind Kejriwal's arrest?
I absolutely disagree with Arvind Kejriwal. Not just Arvind Kejriwal. I disagree with Umar Khalid's arrest. Free Umar Khalid, hashtag.
You've mentioned your mum a few times, and I think younger people in our audience may not know what she had to go through. An IAS officer who actually has acid hurled at her face, and life becomes a struggle in that way for her after that. Can you share what happened?
Yeah. So
Abhijit, most people would identify you, because we live in this age of labels, as right-wing.
Yes.
Do you identify yourself as right-wing?
I actually do in that sense, because I identify as so right-wing that I make Genghis Khan look like a human rights activist.
No, seriously, these labels, what do they mean?
Look, for me, they really mean nothing. But
Yeah.
I'm a free market conservative. I believe in wealth creation. I believe in celebrating wealth and wealth creators. Especially being a Hindu, we don't have a goddess for daridra, for poverty. We only have Lakshmi that we worship every day for wealth. Tell me one person who worships poverty. So then why is everybody pro-poor in this country? I believe in
You can be
choice.
pro-poor but not be pro-poverty.
Exactly. The problem here is they glorify poverty. We need to glorify wealth and make everybody an aspirant to wealth and not glorify. There is no dignity in poverty. I've seen poverty. I've worked with poor people and I know there is no dignity in it. It is overcoming it is so crucial. So that's very important. I'm a security hawk for most part. I recognize the value of talks. I'm not the type who'll be like, for every small thing that happens, Islamabad pe Brahmos chala do, and there are those types as well. But
Many of them are in TV studios.
yes, I do believe in individual liberties.
Yeah.
I do believe that a woman's body is her own and she should have the right to
What she fishes.
exactly, and so on and so forth. So I'm very clear about these positions in general. I am maybe the only variation to that is I'm a statist, which in India, supports a strong state because, we're a third world country. We've never had that state monopoly on violence. And the other problem's always been we've never defined what a state monopoly on violence should look like in India. It's like, for example, if the court gives you orders ki phone khol do, like what's happening with Arvind Kejriwal right now, ki main phone ka password nahi dunga. You can't just do a roving inquiry on the phone. There has to be court monitored where the lawyer of Arvind Kejriwal is present.
Yeah.
And the ED's lawyers are present, and there are clear parameters to get certain things out. You should know what you're looking for. You can't just walk in, because that is what the Stasi and KGB used to do. They just walk into your house
And take your devices.
and take all
or
your
whatever the devices were then.
Whatever, exactly.
Yeah.
You can't do that, right? And that helps because it makes the state stronger. It doesn't make the state weaker. So there are certain things where I very clearly identify as right.
But right from India's freedom movement to now, the debate has been, can you have a modern, contemporary right of center not you, but the country? And, from Rajagopalachari's time to now, we are debating this, that can you be center right on national security, on the markets, but be socially liberal?
Why is that a contradiction? I think
because we don't see that combination often. It's not a contradiction.
Yeah.
It's a model that many people would sign up for.
I think it is absolutely necessary in India to be like that, because industrialization, for example, is one of the most socially disruptive processes we have, right? And it is industrialization which requires a strong state, but it also requires greater freedoms given to the people. So, for example, freedom of speech. which is such a gray zone in India, needs to be codified. You can't keep having court verdicts that one day this is free speech, this is not.
And completely dependent on the view of the judge.
Exactly. It just can't be that.
That's right.
Right. There has to be clarity and things like that. And that is a very socially liberal position, right? You need to have the right to criticize, because in a modern society, what is the fundamental definition of modernism?
Yeah.
Is that you have a right to criticize. You have a right to speak your mind, because it is that kind of blasphemy that leads to innovation and moves the society forward. If everybody is repeating dogma, society mein innovation kahan hai? Where is society moving forward there? So you need that in a society like India. The problem is we're stuck in a paradigm where Indians mostly do cut, copy, paste. Japan ne ye kiya tha, Germany ne ye kiya tha, therefore we should cut, copy, paste out here. It's like the new education policy, which is such a joke. We're going to provide quality education, problem solving. Yaar, tumhare teacher khud problem solve nahi kar sakte hain. How are they going to teach problem solving to
But you speak about, before free expression, there's free thought.
Yes.
And my disagreement personally with labels is that I hate dogmas. And, I'm one of those who gets I'm an equal opportunity offender. I get slammed by the right, I get slammed by the left, because I just follow my own stubborn path.
Right.
You seem to me to be fiercely individualistic. And you have your own mind on things. Do you sometimes find that you're out of sync with the right wing that you broadly identify with? And if so, on what issues do you actually disagree with them on?
So I'm attacked as much by the right. In fact, possibly more so. Yeah.
What do they attack you for?
The beef-eating, the homosexuality, the cross-dressing. There's lots of videos of me in a negligee doing a dance and things like that. And, I don't care, because my sources of revenue aren't dependent on these guys.
That's right.
And I'm like...
But do they actually judge you for any of this?
There is this particular wing of the right that does judge me for it. But look at me. Do I look like I give to Hoots?
Not at all.
I've never given to
Not
Hoots.
at all.
The problem was, growing up, especially in an Indian household.
Where your father was a communist and your mother was a capitalist.
Pure capitalist and pure communist. His name was Lenin. He had to change that name.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was Lenin Mitra. So if you go check...
His name was Lenin College.
He got the Fulbright scholarship. And then they said that was when the McCarthy stuff was happening in America.
Yeah.
So they said, well, you may not be a communist, but somebody in your family definitely is. That's why you got named Lenin, so you're not getting it. So
were you ever a lefty?
I was a very committed lefty as a kid.
Really?
Very committed. I used to read copious quantities of Marx and socialist theory and things like that. And, it's very natural when you want to help people. It's a very alluring worldview. And then, when you hit puberty, you start thinking about things like practicality. Is this actually practical?
Yeah.
And then when you start earning money and becoming, financially independent, you're like, bhai, unke paise le, mera paisa mat le. And then you start moving more and more to the right. And I guess when you've got enough disposable income, where you've got enough money to burn, then you start becoming woke. So, it goes full circle, I guess. What Shakespeare described as second childhood also becomes second socialism, I guess.
So what does the right wing criticize you for? For your sexual orientation?
Not for the orientation.
For the right to eat what you want to?
Yeah, because they believe that beef should not be eaten. I actually gave up eating beef. But that had nothing to do with these guys. That had to do with the fact that the new house that I'm building, my mom asked me very clearly, do you want the family deity in the house? And I said, yes, I'm an atheist. But, I do believe that the rituals and forms, because that is what connects you to your past.
You can be a cultural believer without being a religious person.
And she's like, look, I completely accept on your father's side that you're a Shakta and, goat sacrifice. I mean, mutton and fish have to be served and that's perfectly fine. Aman will also accept that. But in no part of India is beef served. So you have to make up your mind. And so I had to give it up. And it was my own choice as duty to my family deity that had been in the family for hundreds of years to do that. It wasn't because of these guys coming after me, because I will rub it into their noses, because my thing is the sheer hypocrisy of it. On one hand, you claim to be right-wing, but you don't support individual choices for people to do what they want with their money. It's not like you're giving me money. If I was living off your money. So for example, when I was at ORF, the Ambanis have a very strict policy that any building endowed by them, you can't bring meat inside.
Okay.
You can have pet day and bring your dogs and cats and cows and goats in, but nothing dead comes in, not even eggs. You follow that because you're
That's
their
the
employee,
rules,
you're
yeah.
getting the money, it's the rules.
Yeah,
that's fine.
correct.
My thing here is ban beef. Na? अगर खिलाना नहीं चाहते हो, then ban the damn thing. तुम ban भी नहीं करोगे, you want moral policing of me, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to accept that. Which is why even if I don't eat beef, I'm going to defend everybody else's right to eat beef. Right? Till the government bans it.
Yeah.
Do I believe it should be banned? Sure. But have you thought through the economic consequences of it?
Why do you want it banned?
Because I think every country has some kind of consumption ban. So, for example, smoking ban, alcohol ban. In America, there's a horse meat ban. There is a dog meat ban. There's a horse meat ban in 49 states. There is a dog meat ban in several states. There are several countries that ban dog meat. You accept the principle of consumption control. If you accept the principle of consumption control, it is a principle that can be applied. Now, if you want to apply it on religious grounds, then by all means do so. But if you're going to do it, I will accept it. But don't come as a moral police to me that when it is legal, then say, tum nahi karoge, then you can't be part of us. Bhai, I'm not part of you then.
And that's completely logical. And I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere that your father actually presented this argument before you. He actually encouraged you to try beef.
Yes. He didn't have to encourage me much because, I was always very curious. I started learning Latin through Asterix and Obelix because
and that roast boar always looked so enticing, so I would never touch it in real life.
But I totally would. I have.
Oh, you have?
It's
okay.
Delicious. Excuse me. But then, there's one Asterix in Belgium where they have all these funny things like pig's ears and pig's trotters and things. So it's like, I need to try offal. So I need to try kidneys and liver and all those, the nose to tail eating, so to say. And so I really got into it. My father was actually quite surprised. And the first time there was was it a steak? No, it was a hardcore introduction. It was a tartare, which was raw beef. And he was like, what's that? It's like, I think you should try it. It's raw beef. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yum, yum, yum. Polished it off. So he didn't have to encourage me much. Plus, I used to be a hardcore communist in those days, right? So,
why do so many communists become right of center? I can think of so many friends of mine who have done exactly that journey.
Because I think you grow up. I think you grow up. I think when you grow up and you're, in my particular case, it was because there was such staunch, inquiry at home where your mom is always debunking your dad's economic theories and your dad is constantly debunking your mom's economic theories. You get the best of both worlds. But the other thing about communism is it also kind of encourages you to think.
Yeah.
Till you stop thinking what they want you to think, it'll encourage you to think. It's very good at jargon and theory. Like Lenin used to say, every idea is worth 1,000 pages of theory. It was a bit like that. So at some point, I think it's when the organism gains self-realization. I guess I just gained that.
You've mentioned your mom a few times, and I think younger people in our audience may not know what she had to go through. An IAS officer who actually has acid hurled at her face, and life becomes a struggle in that way for her after that. Can you share what happened?
Yeah. So specifically with that particular case, what it was the disinvestment in SPIC that was going to happen, Southern Petrochemicals, which is a fertilizer manufacturer. And what had happened was she actually wrote the note saying, I'm going to oppose this disinvestment because those were the terms we agreed to. It was a joint venture and we were always meant to disinvest at market value, not at cost price. And obviously some deal had been done. So she got shunted out from Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corporation to archives, which my mom and I loved because we love history. So, looking through actual Tamil Nadu archives as actual letters written by Robert Clive and things like that. So it was fascinating for us. But so clearly it wasn't punishment enough. And so the asset had to be thrown, which was done. And it was very difficult for her, but I learned so much. I've learned so much from my mom. And one of the downsides to being the son of a lady like that is you only appreciate very, very powerful women. You appreciate women who, but then I don't appreciate weaklings generally. So it's like I'm an equal opportunity offender that way. I'll bully weak people, and I'm very fond of, but I don't like weak people being bullied by others. And
that's only a privilege you keep for yourself.
Yes. And even my bullying is more like, it's the kind of ragging. Tu mera bacha hai na, tu mera
it's like
bacha
what your
banega.
cousins did to you when
Exactly.
you were...
It's that very cousinly kind of bullying, which, everyone I've bullied has become my friend. I've bullied you also and you've become my friend. No?
This is true. And we will talk about that.
And we will talk about that. But that's the thing.
But I'm not weak.
You're not.
No. We'll come to that story. Right. But let's talk about your mom.
She taught me to appreciate a lot of things. She taught me to appreciate and got me into trouble. She taught me to appreciate powerful women. So, when I was in DPS Mathura Road, they asked us, my mom at work. And everybody was drawing, kitchen. And I was drawing very proudly my mom screaming at her, what's it called? The talukdar or whatever, the dafedar, the guy with the turban and everything.
Yeah, correct.
Screaming at him with that in and out box tray and things. So they called in my parents and my parents were like, so what's the problem out here?
Yeah.
Then the second thing was, there was this thing, in those days in DPS, we still had these debates, should women work?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Well, we had it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I went one further. I was like, not only should women work, women should also divorce their husbands to show their independence. I'm like, what the hell just happened? And that escalated very badly. That time, I think Mrs. Kapoor was the principal. It went all the way up to her office. But anyway, so that was where...
But this incident that takes place with your mother, does it change you?
Yes and no. It certainly changed my relationship with my mother because, she was this very gregarious person who used to actually encourage me to be even more rambunctious than I am. My dad was like always prim, proper, sit down, eat with a fork and knife properly, no elbows on the table. And my mom's like, why are you eating with a fork and knife? Eat with your hands.
Correct.
Go there and scream. Go irritate that auntie out there. Go do this, go do that. And that the fear, the first time I saw fear in her eyes. So, the new house that we built then, it had grills all over. Yeah. It had metal doors all over. Yeah. And that was kind of an expression of how my mom's mind closed around it. And that, that sudden change in her led to a lot of tension between the two of us. And I don't think we've still gotten over it. I mean, I know she loves me to bits. But, I think she's finally gotten over it. Finally, she even forgave Jayalalitha for it and everything. Yeah. So she also taught me forgiveness in that sense, that thing, that time heals wounds. You move on. Don't let things bog you down. Sure, they may affect you, but recognize how it affects you. I think it made me a much stronger, it made well, it was horrible, but she came out mentally much stronger from it. And I think at that level, it made me also a much more mentally strong person.
I mean, it's just terrible what she had to go through. And, I think from the outside, even as her child, you probably can't internalize what that felt like.
Yeah.
It
was just that thing. My memory of it is Priya auntie, who's my mom's friend, she suddenly comes over home.
Yeah.
And there's suddenly lots of cops at home.
Yeah.
And Priya auntie's like, I was like, oh my God, what just happened? Because I knew something had happened. And she's like, your mom's had an accident. And I thought it was a road accident or whatever. And then I was never told till I actually saw her in Apollo Hospital with that. They have some kind of a infection protection dome around you and things. And then they told me somebody threw acid on her face. And at that time, I think it was the chief secretary, was it Venkatraman? I forget who had come into the ICU, and she was crying to him saying, why did she meaning Jayalalitha, why did she do this to me and things like that. So, yeah. And
you never truly get over that, no matter how much time heals. You yourself. And when you came here, I was recounting that time. And, I feel bad that we argued over that without knowing each other. We argued through a public medium. I don't even know if we argued. I can't even remember it properly. But let's talk first about what happened to you. You ended up having to spend 40 odd days?
Yeah, 43 days.
43 days in jail because you were accused of having made a comment that was seen to have, let me choose my words carefully, undermined the Sun Temple, right? And you went to jail for that. And when I look back at that, I think I should have, in an unqualified way, said that was terrible. But because we had maybe sparred on social media, my criticism was qualified and too many ifs and buts, and I feel bad about that. So I wanted to tell you that I was wrong. I was wrong because on principle...
But I was also very nasty to you. Sorry about that.
But even so, the thing about principle is that you should be able to stand up for it, even if you don't get along with the person or don't know the person, or that person has been not always nice to you. So I wanted to tell you on camera that I was wrong in what I said at that time, which was that what happened to you was wrong, but da 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 da. So I was wrong about that, and I want you to know that. But I now want you to talk about that experience. You identify as right-wing, but you're an individualist who doesn't think, I assume, that you did anything wrong in the joke that you made.
Yep.
But you went to jail for it. Those on the left may argue that there are those on the left today who are paying a similar sort of cost for expression, for belief. Did that incident change you and your previous or prior positions in some way?
No, it actually reinforced my prior positions. And I'll tell you why. Because, I believe, for example, that an individual should have the right to litigate and put up legal consequences for people. Right? So keep filing cases against them, take them for defamation and things. I believe in civil defamation, not in criminal defamation, fundamentally, because I don't think that's any job of the state. Second, I have always believed in, free speech has to be defined. What is incitement? In America, you've got the Brandenburg Principle, which is very clear, which is, jaake un logon ko mara. That doesn't count as incitement. It is, kill all fat people with lard rendered from pork and drown them in
like a specificity.
A specificity.
Yeah.
In India, it just changes like kuch bhi, kabhi bhi, anywhere. See, the point of the law is the law is the law when it is consistent in its application. This is why half my timeline is usually dedicated to legal judicial reforms in this country, because you can't have this kind of, completely diametrically opposite interpretations. The way you control yourself is you know what to do, what not to do. So, for example, you know that if you want to relieve yourself, you go to a toilet. You don't do it in any other part of your house.
Who in India knows this? It's men are constantly on the streets taking a piss.
Precisely, right. So why do they not know it? Because there is no enforcement of, public urination or public defecation or things like that. If there was, they would automatically know it. And that is the thing. Because it is not enforced, because it is not drilled into you, you don't do it. And that is why you need clarity of law. The law is the law because it is consistent in its application. The law shorn of consistency is tyranny. That's basically what it is. And the third thing is, I have never believed in preventive detention. Preventive detention can happen if there's a flight risk, or if there is a genuine threat ki bhai, this fellow is going to tamper with intel and with evidence.
So do you disagree with Arvind Kejriwal's arrest?
I absolutely disagree with Arvind Kejriwal's. Not just Arvind Kejriwal. I disagree with Umar Khalid's arrest.
You do?
I absolutely 100%. Free Umar Khalid, hashtag. And you know why? And I keep getting attacked once a year when I do that, when I call it a scandal, because my thing is very clear. Jail Umar Khalid for life when you find him guilty. But you can't put him in jail. That boy has lost 3-4 years of his life, I don't know how long and counting, for zero proof that I've seen so far. And as far as the FIR and shit I've seen, I'm sorry, I don't think that stands on two legs, right? Which is why before he went to jail, I was going on sparring with him and crap like that. Since he's been in jail, I'm not going to criticize him once he's in jail. Bahar nikal, main fir se tere saath sparring karna shuru karunga. Fir hum dushman banenge. But while you're in jail, no. Same with Sadiq Kapan and people like that, right? So Sadiq Kapan, the latest story is somebody said that he wanted to go behead somebody. By this, I can also make up. No?
Yeah.
And
earlier it was who he took a ride with while going to Hathras.
So I don't believe all of this. And see, this actually makes the country a safer country when you keep criticizing your government for things like that, right? And I will always criticize this notion of incitement. So with Sharjeel Imam, he crossed a certain line. It crossed the Brandenburg line. Hum udhar jaake chakka jam karenge and we will cut off the chicken's neck. Okay, that is a very specific threat that needs to be punished. I don't know if the quantum of punishment is what he deserves. In the case of, say, what happened with Nupur Sharma, where this fellow was, what happens when somebody is accused of blasphemy. I think you have to be particularly dense to not know that. And I think this is where the interpretation of the law comes in. When in a third world country. Now, to be fair, Muslims in Saudi Arabia don't do this. Muslims in the Emirates don't do this.
Don't do what?
Going out demanding sartan se juda and things like that. It's a very South Asian Muslim phenomenon. It's a very poor, regressive feudal Muslim phenomenon that you see. Or a state-sponsored protest phenomenon like in Iran, because Iran's actually a very developed, people don't realize this, but in 1979, they were ahead of South Korea and Taiwan in per capita income. They're actually a country where industrialization was aborted halfway. So you don't see that. Here you do. And in India, and this is the context, you see, the problem with the law in India is we're 2 centuries that live together. In the cities, we're the 21st century. In villages, you're literally the 7th or 8th century. It's like if I do blood libel against a Jew in a city, koi consequence nahi hoga. But if I do cow blood libel against somebody in a village, there'll be a whole mob that comes out and sets your house on fire and shit like that, right? So it's what he did to Nupur Sharma. He knew exactly what he was doing. And I'm sorry, but denials don't detract from that fact, because you have to be particularly dense making an allegation of blasphemy and not knowing where that ends up.
Come back to your time in jail. What was that like?
The government actually went out of its way to treat me very well.
When you say the government, you mean the Odisha government?
The Odisha government, right. So they gave me full security, bandobast and everything. And I was like, dude, this is like a bit embarrassing. Can you kind of reduce security? Because it's like I can't make friends with people in jail. And then they went out of the way to see to it. I was very comfortable in my jail cell. I was given the VIP jail cell where all the Sharda Chit Fund MPs were. Excuse me. And any dietary demands that I had would be met and everything. You had morning tea, morning coffee, whatever you wanted, newspapers, everything. They treated me very, very well. So that wasn't a problem. In fact, I actually founded a fantastic anthropological study. That jail has an unusually high number of serial killers.
Okay.
And unfortunately, all the friends I made were serial killers. So there was one guy who had chopped his wife into 200 pieces.
But how could you befriend him?
Because I didn't know. And then I found out. And then I was like, and then, the curiosity, this is how I befriend Taliban when I was in Afghanistan. I know what these guys are capable of, but at an individual level, they're perfectly charming and perfectly sweet. So then,
the banality of evil, in a way.
I guess evil. Evil is.
Evil is a big word.
Bollywood, it's not like Amrish Puri wearing that horns and that's not the way evil actually looks.
Yeah.
So there was that guy. Then there was another guy who had hacked off his wife's head or something like that.
God, how creepy! Yeah.
And this was the male, because there's gender segregation, obviously. So it was only males out there.
Yeah.
And everybody I made friends with was a serial killer of some sort or the other. And it was a fantastic.
But you can look back at it as this dramatic interlude.
But I'll tell you
when it was happening.
Traumatic.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why it was traumatic. It was traumatic for reasons you wouldn't expect it to be traumatic. One was the complete lack of stimulus.
Yeah.
It's just TV. And TV, for me, I don't even own a TV.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Given that both of us are TV,
I haven't.
it's kind of a...
I understand.
Yeah. Because once you have Twitter, the reason I've moved to Twitter is because it's almost like primary source. You have people on the ground there saying what's happening out there, and you're free to decide your sources and things and put things together. So that was one big thing. The second issue was the odor. Because, Jharpada jail on three sides is surrounded by an open moat, which is essentially a nala. And the smell was so bad, I couldn't eat.
Yeah.
Right? So it was... because you feel your head's essentially in a public toilet at all times. And I lost about 17.5 kilos.
It's a good downside.
It's a good downside. Yeah, very good downside. I'm planning the jail diet program and things like that. But anyway, so that was traumatic. But no complaints about the way the Odisha government treated me per se.
But does it today? Or after you came out, does it make you think 10 times before saying some things? Because you went in for a comment.
No.
Which was a joke.
And you know why? I didn't actually go in for the comment. I went in because there were politics happening in the thing.
Correct.
The comment was the bahana.
Yeah, correct.
And you know what?
It almost always is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I realized was, it doesn't matter what I say or don't say. If somebody's decided to send me to jail, they're going to find something to send me to jail.
That's right. Which is scary, right?
Which is scary. Which is why, we keep demanding the kind of legal protections to be clarified and things like that, so that the shades of grey evaporate completely, right?
Yeah.
Which I also am resigned to the fact that India mein nahi hoga. So if somebody wants to send me to jail again,
they still can.
Yeah. So I want to live my life. As Frankie said, I did it my way. I did it my way.
This is a good segue into what is using shorthand is called the democracy debate, right? I bring this up because in election season, the opposition, let's forget what the Western media says because who cares? The opposition talks about this a lot. And it makes the argument that we are entering an election without an equal playing field for the opposition. You said you did not agree or you do not agree with the arrest of Arvind Kejriwal. But do you believe that the opposition has been denied a level playing field?
Yes, and I think denied a level playing field is the case in any country in the world, in any mature democracy in the world, where one party has a significant hold over the voting population, which is you will always have problems raising funds. You will always have problem of outreach. Any TV channel will obviously give time to what sells and not time to what does not sell. So for example, it's the nationalist channels always do way better in terms of viewership than channels perceived to be left-wing, right? That's just the way the market is. It's like, take me, for example. I give very popular opinions out. And on average, you'll see a much lower viewership for me than people who will say, India next superpower, jaake POK mein jaake capture them right now. I'm like, whoa, dude, you can't do that. Nuclear deterrence. I will only get 100,000 views. They'll get 100 million views.
Because
is that an unfair playing field?
Because inanity and extreme positions sell.
They sell. And we noticed this very early on with Al Qaeda. There was no Twitter, there was the dark net.
Yeah.
What we found was that extremist positions. What happens is normally the extremist who wants to go blow something up is usually one person in a village, and they're the freak. But the internet, what it does is all the freaks of each village find an online community. Right. They radicalize even more and they terrorize whole populations into submission, right. Which is what you see as online behavior. What we used to see as Al-Qaeda behavior on the deep net is today standardized Twitter behavior. Be it left or right, it is always the extremists who will gain the maximum traction out there. And that doesn't mean Twitter is an even playing field. At least since Elon Musk came, it's become an even playing field. You don't have, commissars sitting and censoring you like they did under कौन था वो Rasputin lookalike जो पहले था
उसका नाम ही मुझे भूल गया
हाँ that guy
Jack
Dorsey that's the guy. So it's an even playing field. Your followers, your subscribers, your viewers are entirely because of you. right?
But there's still shadow bans and stuff like that, or follow count not increasing.
But they've completely gotten rid of shadow bans and things. There will always be glitches in the system which then get fixed. I'm not seeing that happen anymore. Anybody that I want to see is popping up on my timeline. There used to be shadow bans. I'm not seeing them anymore.
Okay. But come back to the absence of a level playing field.
So, it's when we say level playing field, what do they want? Do they want equal funding? Do they want the same level of funding? Do they want the same level of airtime? Why should a private news channel give you the same airtime and lose advertising value just to be fair to you?
They will say, two of our guys that's the exact comment that Rahul Gandhi made from the rally stage. It's like a fixed match because you bench two of our players unfairly. He meant Hemant Soren and Arvind Kejriwal. That's one point he made. And the second argument that they're making is to do with electoral bonds. Now, personally, I believe that nobody can claim moral superiority on bonds because all of them, other than the communists, have taken money through the bonds. But they will make the point that a Kejriwal is put away on the basis of an approver who was an accused, who then buys bonds after his arrest and he becomes an approver in bulk, 50 crores on one day. I'm not comfortable with the language of fixed match, but I do see that there are legitimate questions thrown up by the bonds in quid pro quo terms, not the moral principle of them in abstract.
Right. Now, here's the issue. I would twist that argument around.
Yeah.
Because my thing is, if the guy has been turned approver, and he's been let go, he's been given all the privileges of an approver, there is no longer an incentive for him to buy those bonds because jo deal hona tha wo already ho gaya hai. Right? So it's a bit of a superfluous argument in that sense. But let's talk about Arvind Kejriwal specifically. The summons gets sent to him only after Vijay Nair turns approver. And Vijay Nair has not bought an electoral bonds, right? And Vijay Nair is apparently the one who has all the information and the data and set up the entire thing. So that is a completely different this thing. Then they didn't want to arrest him. They allowed him to have 9 summons. He went to court seeking protection and the court said no protection. Now, when the court itself is saying no protection, then you'd be dumb to not go arrest him.
But per se, you don't agree with arresting him.
I fundamentally disagree with this notion. I disagree with the presumption of guilt, which the ED works under and which gynocentric laws in this country also work under. It actually started with the gynocentric laws where if you're accused of rape, you are guilty of rape and you have to prove your innocence in court.
We're reversing the burden of proof.
You're reversing the burden. And see,
and the PMLA also reverses the burden.
It does reverse the burden and I have huge issues with it. Which is why I don't want to talk about individuals. I want to talk about the concept involved because everything flows from that concept.
Right. Now, are you a fan of the Prime Minister?
I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of the Prime Minister.
What's nudged you more towards him recently?
So before I wasn't what you'd call a bhakt. My mom is actually a bhakt. She believes he's divinely guided and been sent down by the gods to do good for India and things like that. I'm not. I've always been I'm an atheist also, so I can't believe in God.
So you can't be a bhakt of anyone.
Exactly. Yes. It's the fact that he's delivered and he keeps delivering on all the core demands. I was very critical of him in the first 5 years because none of the core demands were delivered on. But
which core demands?
So privatization, Article 370, Mandir Wahi Banega. This term.
And these are issues you care for?
I very much care for it because I am a cultural Hindu.
Okay.
I do believe in Kashi, Mathura and Ayodhya. And being a Shakta for me, Kashi is particularly important. I've already have a plan कि जब काशी में मंदिर बनेगा, मैं भोले बाबा के बारात में नाचूंगा. Okay.
And do you believe, as Mohan Bhagwat has informally suggested, that the debate that ends there? In the sense that he didn't say it in so many words, I should be accurate. He said you can't go looking for a shivling under every mosque.
Yes, but I believe it's principles based, where it's not numbers based. It's you have to prove consistent historical veneration of the site. So in Kashi, Mathura and Ayodhya, you can prove consistent historical veneration and historical memory. Tomorrow, if you suddenly discover something somewhere and people having not prayed there for 1,000 years suddenly start praying there again, no, sorry, that it doesn't work that way. So, they're trying to do this to the Quwwatul Islam Mosque in the Qutub complex, which is apparently 27 Jain temples. By who's been going there and killing
Correct.
it? Nobody. No? So you can't reverse that. History is history. Deal with it. You can't fix the wrongs of history. It's not about fixing the wrongs of history. It is about what is a continuing practice of veneration today. So yes, I feel Modi has delivered, and these things are very important to me. You know, for me, that psychological thing of Air India being privatized, I never thought 370 would be
Done away with.
The way it was. And I never thought I'd see a Ram Mandir in Ayodhya in my lifetime. And he delivered on that. No? Sure, he hasn't delivered so I don't feel the need to micromanage what he delivers. If I'm happy for him to do things his way, as long as he delivers what he said he'd deliver, which is why I'm voting for the BJP.
Do you agree with the absence of Muslim representation in the last Lok Sabha, given how powerful the BJP is? This is a debate we often have, and BJP leaders have often made the point that it has to be a two-way street. When we give tickets to Muslims, they're called Sarkari Musalmans, they're immediately caricatured and so on. But would you, assuming that Modi is headed for a third term, would you want to see a greater outreach with Muslims? Do you not think that there is a problem that with 200 million Muslims, this powerful electoral giant successful machine called the BJP did not, at least in the last Lok Sabha, have a Muslim member of parliament?
I think he is doing something far more important in terms of representation.
You called him a pro-Muslim prime minister recently, I think in Hindustan Times.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. I think he's the most pro-Muslim prime minister we've ever had. And he's not going to do tokenism, which I completely support. And I'll tell you why. The Congress strategy was, see, India's Muslim polity is very feudal. If you look at Pakistan today, what is happening is, about 200-300 families essentially control everything. It's about 2-3 lakh people within those biradaris that control everything out there. Everybody else is dependent on them. It is a totally feudal system of government out there. That was the state of Indian Muslims because it was a polity that hadn't modernized since 1857. You have these, very refined Muslims who live in these amazing havelis with gorgeous chandeliers and things. They'll be able to hold conversations on Nietzsche or Schiller or Italian Renaissance poetry with you, and they'll occasionally drink scotch and whatnot with fine scotch with you. And they will go there and enforce the droit du seigneur on their tenants and things like that, extort from them, terrorize them. Mukhtar Ansari being a classic case of that.
He's a gangster and a murderer.
Murderer, rapist, God knows what else. Who was also revered and very kind to lots of other people. Okay? Now, that was the state of Muslim polity. The Shias modernized. The Shias modernized completely. The Dawoodi Bohras and the Ismailis modernized completely. And they are now thinking they vote BJP as well because they are thinking in terms of they've transcended identity politics in that sense. With Sunnis, it is compound identity politics, but more than identity politics, it's feudal polity. Because anything a Sunni needs to get done in India used to be through that feudal lord, because the feudal lord was the vote bank who would arrange for the votes to be delivered based on favors rendered to him. His son sent to Oxford, his son given a ambassadorship or this or that or whatnot. What Modi has done is he's broken that lower chain social dependence on the feudal lord. Be it the madrasa funds, good education in madrasa program, which gets banned by the Hindu right. They call him Maulana Modi for it. Giving Muslim women toilets, electrification, the Muslim scholarships and things like that. All of this has reduced that dependence that the average poor Sunni, and the Sunnis are the absolute rock bottom of the income strata in India, their dependence on this feudal lord. He is freeing them from feudal clutches first, and then he will. So, this is the classic thing. A lot of Western theorists used to say India made a big mistake giving everybody the vote when we did. We gave universal adult suffrage. And they said it was wrong. It should not have been done. It should have been a controlled, managed process. we can debate if that was right or wrong. I think what's happening here is they're first being liberated, and then they're already being empowered in that sense. And then when they stop voting on an identity basis, where a Sunni from the BJP is no longer called a Sarkari Muslim or a Bika Hua Musalman and things like that, I think a natural leadership will emerge from within the Sunnis, which you're not seeing right now. Because I think a lot of the BJP leaders were falling into that I am the new feudal lord trap.
But is there, when you see, we spoke about this briefly on another program, when you see a man offering namaz being kicked by a policeman, the policeman is suspended, and there are hordes of people who come out in support of that suspended policeman. And you at that time made the argument that you too were against the suspension of the policeman because the police has not been sensitized to do better or to do different with any poor, helpless, powerless person. He may not have been picked on for being Muslim. But there are those who would say that there is greater tolerance of the manifestation of, let's say, Hindu faith in public spaces than there is of Muslims today. Right? That there would be a greater fuss, for instance, made about Muslims offering namaz in a corner of a mall than there would be compared to the kawariyas marching down the highways.
Right.
Do you see a double speak there? Do you acknowledge that there is a dualism in public response today? I don't even know what public response is. Public is a big word. The social media noise.
Social media, I see it very equally divided, where one set of people will criticize the kawariyas, but the same people criticizing the kawariyas will not criticize the namazis. And the people who support the kawariyas will always be criticizing the namazis.
That's right.
So I see
it's not even-handed.
It's not even-handed.
Which is why I think you gave the example of the Hanuman Chalisa in Bangalore.
Exactly. Right. Now, the thing here is, we've never negotiated our public spaces. I don't think Indians have a sense of privacy. Neighbor wali auntie, she's lovely, but she'll always ask me, beta, tumhara shadi kab ho raha hai? Main aake tumhara ghar dekhna chahti hu. Tum ghar basa lo. Like, auntie, I mean, it's very cute because she makes fantastic aloo ke parathes, which I really want. So I tolerate that. But we've never negotiated our public spaces, loudspeakers, a strict time gap on 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. should
but applied evenly.
Nothing is ever applied evenly in India, right? Where is the law ever applied evenly in India? So what happened to that guy was wrong, but suspending him was wrong because every incident like that should force us to ask the question, was this cop trained? Where was the escalation ladder given to him to go from apprehending this guy to kicking this guy?
But should there have been no consequences for that kick?
There should have been consequences for that kick. I'm not sure
what they should have been.
But the consequence should have been to his superior officer. Did you do training with this guy? And should have been to his super superior officer to see if he had standard operating practices, if that had been drilled into him, if those responses, if the graded responses to it were exactly as per standard operating procedure. Having lived and worked in a Western environment for the last 15, 20 years of my life, people don't realize how much effort goes into that certification process of standard operating procedures, but it has to be second nature to you, right? And unless both you and your trainer have signed off on it, the consequence for indiscipline falls on your trainer. But once you've both signed off that I've understood and internalized it, the consequence falls on you. We don't have those systems out here. We're very crude, third world kind of a system of that. So again, is it feasible in India? I don't know. But is it aspirational in India? Yes.
Okay, we've spoken about everything else but some of your core areas of expertise. And because we have only a few minutes left, I want to pick up something that's in the headlines now. The Guardian says, and India denies, that India has taken out on Pakistani soil, using sort of spycraft, terrorists, most wanted men. And this has become now a big global debate in the same manner that we saw, not with the same consequences or with the same foreign policy consequences, but the same debate what we saw around Niger in Canada, and what the Americans are trying to make noise over Gurpatwan Pannu. Let's start with the Guardian article. What do you think?
Okay, let's separate the issue from the Guardian.
Yes.
Because I think...
No, the Guardian I'm only attributing.
Yeah, because the Guardian articles are very shoddy. It's clearly a handout. Because the lady who...
By whom?
By Hannah Ellis Peterson.
No.
It's
a handout
by ISI. I personally think it could even be the MEA to discredit her. Fantastically played asset, I guess. Because the ISI has done this before. They gave it to Annie Gowan of the Washington Post. You remember she also wrote one little you scratch my back, I scratch your back kind
I don't remember that piece.
This was some 7-8 years back when she was in Delhi. So I'm not surprised by it because, the thing is the Indian government gives these foreign journalists nothing. The Pakistani government opens every door to them. And so when they get that sudden access and information, they just soak it up lock, stock and barrel without any filters or anything. She made such huge critical mistakes in it. Rizwan Ahmed, who's mentioned out there in his photos in that article, as India having bumped off in Lahore or wherever, was actually arrested by police and is still safe in jail in India.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Such a big mistake. And I did a Google reverse image search of it. There are hundreds of news articles about him from 3-4 months back. She didn't even do a basic Google reverse search. She didn't even check that Gurpatwan Pannu is alive. She wrote Gurpatwan Pannu is dead.
Really?
Yeah, she did. And now, even without the basic ethics and professional responsibility of a change of an editorial note saying this
was made a mistake and we are correcting it.
They haven't even done that. And they've changed it to Gurpatwan death to Gurpatwan plot. Right. So let's leave the Guardian aside. I've never had a very high opinion of them. So now, Punjab is a severely criminalized network.
Yes.
Because what has happened out there is they missed the industrialization of the Narasimha Rao era because that is when terrorism was dying out there, right? So they skipped that entire stage of development. It's a very feudal state where 20% Jat Sikhs own everything out there pretty much, which is why the Congress is also Jat Sikh, the Akalis are also Jat Sikh, the BJP will also be Jat Sikh, and AAP is also Jat Sikh thing. So 20% control everything out there. There is also significant criminal networks out there because there is no new jobs or things like that. Everything, the drug running mafia, because all crime is fungible, it's all linked up in one way or another with politics and this and that. In a situation like that, the ability to exploit criminality becomes very, very easy because they're all transnational criminal networks. You look at Canada. What do Khalistanis have in common? First is they have social control because an average Sikh boy, an innocent little Sikh boy in a village out here where everybody is Sikh, he gets along for hundreds of miles around him, he gets along. He lands up in Canada, he has no fellow Sikh to talk to. His entire social life, everything is dependent on the Gurdwara out there, and the control of the Gurdwara means they get complete social control of the community out there. They are essentially living in a hostage situation in Canada. The second is they control the trucking business, means of transport. Third, rap, popular music, is how you normalize, gangsterism and things. Rap is a very important, crucial element of all of this, all of which you see. Sidhu Moosewala is very famous for all his gun and this thing. Absolutely. And that other, Jojo Singh, Yo-Yo Singh or whatever, used to Honey Singh. Used to keep talking about rape and things. And Diljit Dosanjh, who I don't think is terribly smart, who kind of glorifies all of this without realizing it and not in a as crude a way as Moosewala and Yo-Yo did. This is the network. Now, if some smart aleck here gets the idea, why they're using all these networks against us, transnational crime network is what it is. They're too stupid to call it what it is, transnational crime network. They say Khalistani, 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 in which case you're literally conferring political respectability on them. You should be calling it a transnational crime network. They've reversed it. They've used it to get rid of people in, say, Pakistan, Canada, whatever. Whose fault is that? If you're turning a blind eye to crime and the fungibility of crime in your countries, and if it gets weaponized against you, that's your own fault.
I know, but the invocation of the rules-based order.
The rules suit them. See, the thing is, why do you need judges? So the rules are there in the Constitution, but you still need judges to interpret them. What the West says is, there is rules-based order, but we will apply the rules as we see fit. We will invade, we will bomb a legitimate government in Syria. We will sanction Russia for responding to a legitimate request for aid from the legitimate government of Syria. we will violate the ceasefire on Libya and actually enact a regime change in Libya and call it a ceasefire. So they will. Everybody agrees on the rules. The issue is the judgment of those rules that they want to.
So the West is guilty of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But the India response to Canada's allegations made by Trudeau in a clumsy, oafish way, and to the Americans was very different.
Because the Americans gave actionable intel. They were specific and they were not cantankerous. Justin Trudeau, to this day, can't tell you what concrete intel is. He says credible allegations. There is no such thing as a credible allegation. There is allegations and there is proof. You provide proof, India will act on it. You give allegations.
So how do you see this debate between India and America resolving itself?
I think it resolves itself the way debates like this have resolved between America and Israel, which is that you take a slap and bygones be bygones. And in this case, I think they've pinned it to some rogue officer somewhere who has long since retired, which, in India happens. There was actually a guy, a grifter, who stayed in high security government quarters in Kashmir for months on end, claiming he was a PMO official, and nobody checked him for it.
I know that story. Yeah.
Now imagine if somebody gets into high security, stays there for months on end on government expense. You think somebody going here and saying, "Janta hai mera baap kaun hai? Ye kar, main tera case sort out kar dunga. Tu jaake ye kar." Especially with dumb criminals, and criminals tend to be dumb. There's a very high correlation between criminality and low IQ. Was that such a great social revelation? So that's my take on it.
Okay, we could talk for us, but we have to close. We've got to get you back and talk about all of the strategic affairs and foreign policy conversations that I was looking forward to having, but that's going to be for part 2. Thank you so much, Abhijit. It's been fun.
Thank you so much, Barkha. Always fun talking to you.
Thank you.